Hi, welcome to the 2023 InXpress Convention breakout session about finding international customers. Today we have Business Performance Manager and Onboarding Coach Jason Metteer. I'll turn it over to you, Jason, to introduce yourself.
Good day, account executives. Welcome to our account exec focused breakout session on where to find international customers and then more importantly, closing the business. I'm Jason Metteer, as Maddie said. For those of you I have not yet met, I'm the onboarding coach. I work with new franchisees at the corporate office. Before I get started, I want to say, if at any point I call you sales reps, it's not out of disrespect for your title. It's because 10 years ago, I came on as a sales rep with InXpress. I worked that position for 2 years, earned the third and then second fastest growing sales rep awards, which won our franchise a Top Gun seat. And then later that year actually became a franchisee in 2015 and then sold after renewing in 2020. So I've been an onboarding coach now for about the last 2 years. My focus as an account executive and then certainly as a franchisee was on the high margin, hard to find international customers. Today, I'm going to share with you the techniques I utilized to find those exact international customers. I'll go through the verticals identified as good importers, exporters, what they ship, and how we won the business. Through this discussion, please, all of y'all, come off mute to ask questions, get clarification on anything I say, and any recommendations any of you other coaches have. Please, that expertise is what we're all here to share and certainly deliver in this message. For those of you listening to the recording, be sure to take notes. There are going to be a lot of free leads or verticals that we're going to hear. If there's a company that you hadn't heard about or a service or anything that sounds exciting, be sure to take note of that and work through that with your franchisee. That is what we're here to do, like I was saying, is share the message and continue to rise the tide of all of our ships. Whether you're out knocking doors or calling, the same tactics can be utilized. Door knocking was not exclusively, but nearly all of my approach. I would utilize Google Maps to find office parks and then walk up to each door and ask what they're doing. I know some of y'all are thinking, what a waste of time. The phone is far more effective. Others are thinking, I can't do that. I live in a small city or maybe even another country entirely. No matter your approach, you can utilize Google Maps. I spent my whole day with the mindset, I'm looking for international, but I'll take freight and domestic customers. That's my kind of side project, but my focus was always on international. I annoyed all of my friends and family to interrupt every story they told me or company they talked about. And I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard me say this in training, to ask those friends or my mom, do they ship internationally? Just constantly annoying every stranger and anyone that would listen to me to find more companies that needed our help. If you're new or if you haven't yet worked through your sphere of influence, that is a fantastic place to start developing your verticals. I know DHL includes this in every presentation, but I cannot reiterate heavily enough. The value of an importer is far greater than any exporter I brought on. I'm going to say that again. If you didn't write that down, you see Magnus nodding along. He knows this as well. The vast majority of the quality, high margin international customers I brought on are importers. When you find an importer, do not lose track of them until you confirm we are not able to win the business. I would say that was one of my strongest suits as an account exec and then certainly as a franchisee as well, was that once I found a company, we didn't ever let them go. We kept very close connection with them and did whatever we could to build the rapport we'll talk about in a minute and bring that business through. And a lot of that revenue, those very successful import customers are still shipping with InXpress years after my sale. Once I find that international prospect, as I was saying, particularly an importer, I start looking to uncover pain. I found the easiest way to do this was to get a tour of their warehouse. Some of you like to go for a tour after your discussion. I prefer it at the front. If you're not able to meet with this person, pull them up on Google Maps. This in-person tour gives us something to bond over. There were so many conversations and appointments I walked into where I was nervous or scared, or this is such a huge opportunity. I don't want to slip this. It's just going to slip right through my fingers if I don't do or say the right thing. When we can go out in the warehouse, we can walk We're peers now. This isn't a big, scary CEO. This is just another person on a tour walking around. What's that up there? And where did that come from? Is a lot easier to ask. This in-person tour often gave us something to bond over, like I was saying. If I can't find the pain that I'm looking for, it's much easier to start building that friendship, some rapport with this newly acquired information. Let's say we're over the phone and we're not doing this in person. If you can't do a physical tour, again, utilize Google Maps. Take a close look at their business. Sometimes you can even get it over a long time frame. Google Maps has been going by my house for years. There's a 10-year period, at least every other year, of what this place looked like. It's the same thing for a lot of these office parks. Unless they're way back in the middle, if they're near a main road, they're getting recorded on a regular basis. You're seeing if this company's been there for a long time. Grab the little yellow man off the bottom of your corner, drop him on the street. If you guys haven't found out about this yet, it is a fantastic way to go knock an office park. I would then, again, walk the office park or industrial park, and those are separate things, to identify other good international customers and prospects. If FedEx is putting a drop box into a neighborhood, there's a high probability that there's someone shipping there. Go find those people. In my franchise, and certainly I think a lot of us, there were 4 main things that made a good customer. They spend more than $100 a month, they are automated, they pay on time, and they ship international. Let's talk about those last 2. Ships international. Those were our high margin, our best customers. It didn't matter if you were just logging in once a month to book a document. That was going to be good business. What about that pays on time piece? That's a really hard thing to vet. Something that it only comes with experience and learning the way this person speaks and the way their office looks. You don't have that advantage if you're not there in person, or at the very least, like we're saying, going and looking at them on Google Maps, seeing the track record. If the lawn is messed up and there's beat up cars without tires out front, I got a lot of other questions. Their website looks like it's from the 1980s, and this isn't really what the kind of company we're looking for. This is someone that I'm going to have questions now about them paying a bill. While I was walking the park, I would look for flags. International companies will often have a world clock inside their office, but they're going to have a flag or 2 from another country out front. When you're walking through the park, you can look for pallets out by the back dock. Keep your eyes peeled for other shipping indicators. Or like I was, always looking for something curious to ask them about. I've never seen a business like this. I've never seen this before. Look at these long crates. Where do these come from? What happens with this? Ask a lot of questions. Know what questions you need to get answered to keep pulling information until you're able to disqualify them, or they start asking questions. You hear me get excited in my voice when they start asking questions, because that's when I get to talk. I know they're listening, and this conversation is moving forward. It isn't just me being annoying. This is when the single sales objective comes into play. Know what that is in every interaction, and ensure you are accomplishing that as often as possible. This is what helped me feel like I was making progress, no matter how frustrating the day was. Like everyone in this meeting, and certainly y'all listening to the call, can identify. It is very frustrating, pounding the phones, hearing no, and getting hung up on. Find those little wins. Keep your objective razor focused so you can accomplish that and move forward. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. In training, we talk about how it's important to be a consultant to your customers, and that starts with the sale. A successful consultant is an avid goal setter. A couple of things here. These are great to write down. You need to know what you want. Second one, they have listening skills. You must be able to listen more than you talk. Silent and listen are anagrams. Don't be talking the whole time. If you're talking more than they are, and whenever I say this in a presentation, I always feel at this point like I've talked way too much over the last 9 minutes. And it starts to weigh on me that I'm the only one speaking. It should feel weird that you are the only one speaking because they aren't listening, if that's what's happening. A successful consultant is enthusiastic, a positive mindset, even in difficult times. They're passionate. If you didn't write that one down, Be passionate, love what you do, and exude this when you talk to others. How about confidence? Believe in the brand, whether that's DHL or UPS or InXpress. Believe in the service, the ability to help others. One that I strive for. It's on my wall, and I look up there every time I think this. It's something that I think Mike said to me years ago, or maybe Steve Chisholm, about how consistent I am. That was what I strive for in all of my conversations. To be credible and reliable and trustworthy comes from consistency, showing up. And then the last one, and I think where we as consultants really start to come into play, is being a problem solver, looking for areas to help. Beyond our typical in, do, out questions, for those of y'all that don't know that one, that's a great one to write down. In, do, out. Where do your products come from? Where do your raw materials come from? Which country? What do you do with them once they get here? Where do you ship domestically? And then where do you export to? Be curious about their company. Within those in, do, out framework questions, ask probing questions. We're looking to find additional pain, always looking for more pain. You'll hear me talk about some pain and the simple solutions that we were able to bring, often unique solutions, to the customers that we want. Certainly those big importers you keep hearing me talk about. How do they create their labels? Great probing question. Is there frustration there? Who pays for the duties? Maybe they need their new shipping consultant to review their duty bills for them. While we were out meeting with the area sales manager, the international area sales manager with UPS, he reiterated over and over again, spent a good bit of time talking about the value that can be gained reviewing non-transportation invoices. Do they ship high value? Be sure to get their EIN and show how easy it is to get an ITN in WebShip Plus. Again, ask for duty invoices and or commercial invoices, not just that transportation invoice we normally do, to truly be a consultant. There are often extra savings there that aren't included on that transportation, or more importantly, you could save them over what they're paying with FedEx on that brokerage, and then not have to give as much on the transportation costs, which, as I continue to talk about, is more margin for you. A few other probing consulting questions, if you want to write these down. What's the most important thing you and I should be talking about? What are you trying to accomplish in the next few months? Align your objectives with theirs. What's your biggest challenge? How is X issue currently impacting your business? Who or what other departments at your company are being impacted? Is purchasing? Tell us who else is involved in this, the other international decision makers. If nothing changes, what are the implications? Bless you. We had one customer that she was shipping, it was mostly filtration units and parts. and she found that we were saving them about $100 a shipment when they had to ship their additional components or supplies back out. So she was going around the office whenever she saw someone shipping something international and not on WebShip, and she would hit them over the back of the head and tell them that they just wasted another $100. Find the things that really shift those customers. What are the implications of you wasting a couple of $100 a month? Is that the difference between your company maybe having a Christmas party or meeting the budget? As the economy shifts, InXpress is a fantastic business in a downturn because every company is looking to save money. We have positives when the economy is going positive as well. But for me, I really found the best traction was when the economy was in a downturn, because you could just walk in and say, is your company looking to cut costs? And you knew what the answer was. You just needed to have your next question ready. We'd ask them, what's your ideal outcome? And then my last kind of probing question here is, if you could change, you guys have heard this one before, one or two things about your logistics process, what would that be? It's hard to ask that as an intro, but once we've got a good conversation going, that's a lot easier to ask. Always ask if they have any referrals for you. Every time a prospect or certainly a customer thanks me, I'd be sure to say, it's my pleasure. Can you think of one or two other people or companies that would benefit from whatever it was they just thanked me for? This is one of my favorites. Be sure to review bill of ladings and waybills to find consignee referrals. Companies to look up and contact that you know are shipping or receiving because your customer just shipped there. A couple of things to have in front of you. For me, always a zone chart. A lot of our customers here were DHL. So you'll see this is my DHL zone chart. And then I also have rate tables. I got one for export, and sorry if it's blurring that. There's nothing to see here. One for export and one for import, specifically showing costs, franchise costs if I can, or whatever the lowest rate is that I'm able to sell with that 10% minimum or what my franchisee has said is what we're willing to go down to. I want to be able to compare rates with prospects that share costs. Always be ready to do an appointment. Here's another great thing to keep with on your desk or with you or in appointments all the time, the InXpress way. If you keep this in front of you, it is a great reminder when you feel lost or frustrated to refocus and keep it simple. Keep that core question. We need to get this answered. We need to get this RFQ. We need to have these objectives accomplished, and we can move forward. We want to find that right customer. Keep those specs in front of you. How about a couple of things to keep in mind? Be a consultant. These are our big takeaways here. Look at it that way from the start. People are resistant to give you invoices. Be a consultant, and they're less likely to be skeptical. Every day, this is a great one to write down if you guys don't remember Phil Jones. Every day, I'm working to do the basics to a high standard consistently. It is the biggest thing written on my wall. It is the most important thing. It's a virtue that I try to live by. I was looking for 2 right customers, 2 activations each week. The way I got there was by having 1 or 2 good conversations each day. It's not about having 100 conversations. The first time I ever went out and knocked doors, I brought 54 cards back to my franchise owner at the time. And I handed him that stack with a clip on it. And I remember thinking, I guess I could do this every day, but there aren't very many office parks that are as big as this one that I went to get this many business cards. And the shock on his face, the excitement on his face of how many business cards that was, the conversations I had. That kind of day doesn't have to happen every day. Have that kind of day a couple of days a month, a couple of days a week if you could. Certainly in the beginning, we want to have that high level of activity. What makes a good, consistent sales rep, account exec, is someone that is having regular, good conversations, having those appointments and those pricing conversations. When it comes to closing, be sure to ask for the business. Push for the close. Get the prospects to give us some money. We're not doing this for fun. We're doing this to get paid. Push them to have that transaction with you. In my sales days, trying to identify verticals as we move on was always on top of my list. Finding companies that ship that are more and more similar. The conversation is so much easier when I speak their language. Certainly looking for companies, if you hadn't thought about this, that are shipping samples. Our best international customers, we often won their business shipping samples or items that needed to be repaired by an overseas office or an office overseas. Something like an Italian headquarters importing products from the Italian office that are being sold stateside, or maybe shipping pieces back to the corporate office in Germany that need to be repaired. Or we had one in Israel as well. Fantastic verticals. Don't keep your eyes squarely on Zone G over there in China. Zone F, you'll hear me talk about Japan and Italy. Those were the zones we were heavily focused on. Again, as we talk about verticals, find the one that works for you. A franchisee I work with was really struggling to find international customers. Magnus, Mike, maybe you guys can relate to this as well. As he was doing the basics to a high standard consistently, he was activating freight and new domestic customers on a fairly regular basis. As he learned the ins and outs of his customer supply chain, he built confidence and learned how to ask the questions that yielded international business. He found verticals. He found ways to really mine those verticals within the in, do, out framework. Once you find a vertical, you should look for the more companies like that. Looking for trade magazines, conventions, all over the internet. A lot of times the government even keeps lists of these large entities. When you're identifying verticals, it's like finding their mine. You know which mountain the gold is in. You know that it's time to start digging over there. You just need to get out your shovel and get to work. Pull as much value out of that mountain as you can. Once I identified a vertical, I recognized there are many ways to find other companies like that. Oftentimes, they're in smaller cities. This specifically, Magnus is nodding along now, he agrees. Those smaller companies, those smaller cities are not getting mined as hard as downtown Atlanta. The customers we had in South Georgia or North Georgia or up at the borders of Tennessee and the Carolinas are much stickier. They're rarely ever contacted by anyone. Again, this is how many successful franchisees have built a strong, diversified book of business.
Hey, Jason, one of the things that you find with the verticals as well is it becomes a small world. So finding referrals within that vertical becomes a lot easier because your new customer knows others in that industry that they can drop some names and help you with some intros. But it becomes a small world.
Absolutely. That's a great point. As we learn their language, we tell them we're helping so-and-so that they knew at the convention or someone that they're their backup supplier, and we have credibility within this. We even spun it as, we're helping your competition, sir. Are you sure you don't want help?
Yep.
As I kind of look back on my big pieces that what really pushed us forward with international customers was looking for importers. You heard me say that. Big takeaways, the ones to write down. If you didn't write down importers, listen to this again. As I worked back through some of the conversations I had with the business I won, I immediately noticed that pretty much all of the best customers were importers. As I looked through, I found that a lot of them were also importing from Zone F, like I was saying, in Japan and the Koreas, and then Zone C, the dominant countries in Europe as well. Second one to write down is to utilize Google Maps. Figure out which color pavement means there's probably some trucks over here. There's probably freight and businesses. Maybe you're using the FedEx.com website even to figure out where those drop boxes are. Drop your little Google man there and look around those offices. Within that line, we're identifying verticals, becoming experts there. Set goals and hold yourself accountable to accomplish them. If you want to diversify your business, if you want to find more international customers, you're not going to get there unless you ask those questions. I think most importantly, there are no silver bullets, just hard work. I've said to a few of y'all what Thomas Jefferson said, one of my very favorite quotes. I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more of it I have. Before we transition to talk about the verticals in which I found success, were there any questions or comments that either of y'all had?
I've got a quick question. Can you talk a tiny bit about disqualifying customers? So what are some red flags that you see that would make you say, this is not going to be a good customer for us?
Thank you. Great question. When we heard that someone had a very low rate, if we were talking to a document shipper, if they said we spend $20 to ship something, I was going to move that one down my list quite a bit. I was not as excited about that unless it was into Canada and there was a little bit of room there. That was a quick one to disqualify it for us. If they said things like, oh, we used to use DHL, but we didn't pay our invoice for these reasons, my ears shut off real quick and I was done listening to that conversation because I knew that person would say that to me eventually, and that would be me paying that invoice. Within those four things that make a good customer, that to me, Maddie, is how I'm going to disqualify someone super quick. So those other two, if they aren't automated, if they tell me they use paper waybills, they tell me they want to call me to have me book every shipment, there needs to be, we talk about it, I think we said earlier this week in training, if they're giving us $30K a month in margin, absolutely, we'll book your waybills. When you're not on that level, when you're not that huge, just completely beyond all expectations kind of customer, I need you to be booking your own way bills so that I can go have more conversations like this, find more customers like this.
Great, thank you.
Can you give me like a minute, 2 minutes
Please.
to talk real quick?
Yeah.
I have some comments on some of the stuff so talking about taking notes, and I hope people have taken notes. But just a couple of hot buttons that you hit on that I always think about that I actually love, and they're important enough to reiterate. So in no particular order, actually, it's in the order of what you were talking about, Jason. But number one, once you find somebody and you have them, you have to treat them like gold. It is 10 times easier to keep an existing customer than it is to find a new customer. So once you get somebody shipping with you, treat them like your best friend. Get to know them. Get to know about them. Friend them on Facebook. Do all the little things that other people don't do. And it's amazing what a little pizza dinner, what a little pizza lunch would do to an office. Three Little Caesars pizza will buy you 6 months of dedication from this company. So once you find somebody, keep them. Let's see. You talked about the tour. I love that idea too. Getting a company tour. Not only does it show you the operations, but it gives them the ability to actually they're prideful of their company, right? So it gives them the ability to show you what they're doing and how they're doing it. Also, another thing that I'm huge on, and I love this, and Jason, I'm actually going to add this to my repertoire, but people buy from smooth, confident, energetic people. You threw in the word passion, and I love that. Passionate people. So smooth, confident, energetic, and passionate people, that's what people buy from. So that's awesome. Also, you talked about referrals. That's people who are happy with you want to help you. And I'm almost done, I promise. But I love also what you talked about, the in, do, out. Find out, and one of my most successful franchisees, that's what he does. He finds out everything about what they do. How do they bring it in? What do they do with the product? How do they get it out? So he wants to be part of the entire supply chain. Verticals. I'm a huge fan of verticals, especially for people that are doing phone work. Pick a vertical and become an expert in that vertical. Pick something that you love. I always use the example of, I love sports. So when I owned a franchise, I sold out. We sold to athletic goods manufacturers, and that was something that we became experts in. And we figured out all the nuances about what they did. One of my other biggest franchisees, he sells textiles. So he gets imports, like Jason was talking about, from China, and he's become an export and an expert in getting those imports. And then the last thing, like I said, no particular order, small towns. I love selling to small towns. You don't have as much competition from competitors. You're not competing against as good a rates. It's all the direct carrier reps, they're focusing on the dock doors that have 50 bays where trucks are backed up. There's a red and green light, letting the carriers know where they can back up to. So, small towns, it's a great way to go. So anyhow, I don't know if that helped, but I did want to talk about. Like I said, I took notes. And I hope other people took notes. And those are some of my key takeaways of what you talked about so far. So other than that, I'm going back on mute, and I didn't say a swear word.
Thank you, Magnus. I couldn't agree more about those small towns. I think that's something we don't hit hard enough and frequent enough. The way that I'm received in downtown Atlanta with a locked door, and I've got to do a lot of work to get through there, versus a door that's propped open and there's muffins on the counter and a polite, happy person that's happy to see me and someone to talk to. The reception is so different that it almost, and I know a lot of us as account execs now, and certainly over the last couple of years, haven't done a lot of door knocking, but that is really where the relationships are built in our franchise. Those were the best customers. And to Magnus's point, nobody was calling on those businesses that had one or two dock doors, or as we all know, when they only have a front door, they only have the high margin, low volume business coming out of the business, where those businesses with all those dock doors are going to have more low margin, high volume business. How about
Jason, Mike. Just to before you move on to a new topic, you talked about being curious. People love to talk. They love to brag. They love to do more talking than you do. So let them talk. Be curious. They like to show off. Sometimes you're talking about how things are going and what you'd like to change, maybe. But when you're curious, you're also asking, what new products are you bringing out here? What are you looking forward to? New markets, new countries that you'd like to go into. So by being curious, you're going to find out not just what's happening now, but what is going to happen the next 6 months, the next year or two, so you can be a part of that with them. So I like the thought of being curious and letting them do a lot of talking, asking those probing questions. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely, Mike. I think your point there. We feel like other people know the things that we know, and we'd be so surprised to find out where the gaps in their business are. The little simple things that we could resolve. The first one on my list for free verticals are ball bearings. The difficulty that companies have to import ball bearings, you'd think it was nuclear waste. Because they're part of munitions, they're part of what goes in tanks, and they're very heavily controlled commodities. One of our largest importers, certainly the franchise that I sold, one of their largest customers, I'll quit saying that. All the companies I talk about going forward are going to be those large customers. They're importing ball bearings. Their issue was that they were getting stuck in customs. We cleaned up their ball bearing sheets. We got them on file with DHL. We got them away from FedEx or whoever they were using before. And they have been shipping for, again, nearly 10 years now with DHL regularly. Another really big one that we had was actually a beverage bottling equipment. So here we're talking about the Italian headquarters. They got an Italian flag in front of their business. They got just everything about this business is basically an Italian company, this huge Italian company that you and I have never heard of because it's not in this country. They ship exclusively from Italy. They import many, many times a week, certainly a few times a day, products for multi-million-dollar machines that are going to Coca-Cola, or your laundry detergent was likely poured by one of these machines. They spin very, very fast. They're high automation, very, very efficient machines that when one goes down, it is incredibly expensive for those companies. And they are willing and happy to pay for that product to be delivered very, very quickly. Those were the kind of customers that we were looking for. You hear us say it, and it's such a simple thing to say. Companies that need expensive things delivered yesterday. That is the kind of prospect, what makes a really sweet, sweet vertical. We had another one that they don't do as much anymore, but they were importing almost exclusively out of Hong Kong, and they were shipping inventions. They were a product development company. So when you went in their office, you saw a wall of all the little drills and different parts and new machines and inventions that DeWalt or huge corporations were putting out, and they were being developed and invented, or at least developed with this customer. So as those companies came on board, we'd import a couple of pallets, we'd import bigger and bigger loads as they continued to build this product out. But it started with just those little samples, like you heard me say earlier. We had another one that shipped hardware for streamlining municipalities. That's all it was. It was products that they effectively invented that went into those little silver boxes that are sitting next to every stoplight that made the traffic system work better. They are, to this day, one of InXpress's largest UPS customers. Obviously, that's not their international piece. That's the international piece for that one was their manufacturing in South Africa and then importing those products, even from Israel as well. Love the Israeli lane. South Africa, those are fantastic, fantastic lanes. Tough to ship in and out of those parts of the world, and where DHL really strives. We had quite a few customers that shipped LED lights as well. Specifically, the business that we won, the really good LED customer, they had exported. So it's a fun story. They imported lights from China, Hong Kong, and then they exported a giant on the wall sign for a new Gucci store that was opening over Christmas, over New Year's. So y'all know that was a very, very expensive thing for a customer that had to happen and had to work. And to Magnus's point, you might buy 6 months worth of loyalty with a pizza and some Cokes, but you'll buy a lifetime of loyalty with making Gucci happy. Magnus liked that one. If y'all aren't laughing, go Google Gucci. The next one, we had a very big customer that imported for it's a company called Komatsu. So we didn't work with Komatsu. Again, Google that one if you don't know them. Huge tractor company. All of these are verticals that you all should be writing down. These are the companies to be going after. Anyone that's importing for a large company, so that they didn't have Komatsu's DHL account number, they had a FedEx account, but they would import very, very large products for Komatsu on a regular basis. We're talking heavy machinery and industrial parts, if you didn't write that one down. Moving to my next one, another heavy machinery. These are imports out of Japan as well. Drive shafts. There are so many specialized equipment and products that it was one of my favorite stories. The guys that ran this business, they'd say FedEx would come in with the delivery and he'd be struggling to carry it and he had this bad attitude on his face. These are free stories. This is why we work with the customers that we do. And then he said, that DHL driver, he comes in here, he snaps that thing up, throws it on his shoulder, says, thanks, have a great day. And he's out of there bouncing along like he's listening to music. That was the difference that we were for those people as well. We had a few that were in that tractor vertical. Specifically, if they're an Italian or, again, a foreign manufacturer, those parts aren't made here. They're importing those. There's usually some pretty good margin in those as well because those are specialized. Same thing as marine. Talking boats, engines in that category. The last really big importer I'll mention is a fiber optic company. They import, they machine, they adjust it. That's their due. And then they were even exporting those up to Canada and down to Mexico often as well. How about some exporters? You guys heard me saying things that are broken that need to be repaired or returned. We got a corporate office in Germany, specialized equipment, kind of like we're hearing about the chip war that's going on. There's special machines only made in the Netherlands. That's the only place that you're going to get those things repaired. Those are the kind of customers that we're looking for, very specialized. I had a lot of customers that shipped electronic hardware and servers, especially recycled. If you can find someone that's buying it for almost nothing, they're going to be selling those internationally. The margin for those companies is a lot bigger than if they've got to source new products. Look for used electronics dealers. Rubber. I know. These things you never think of. The belts, the systems, the things that manufacture our modern world are imported from elsewhere. They do things with them here, and then they ship them domestically and export them. Rubber is in that category. If you could find a company that is working in the rubber trade, again, whether that's belts or tires, very, very valuable products. Companies are willing to pay a premium to get them brought in a hurry. We had a big customer that did dies and envelope folding machines more specifically. So a die is that thing that punches out maybe the envelope out of a raw sheet of paper. It's this container-sized machine that on one side you put a stack of paper, and then out the other side comes 15 or 20,000 licked, sealed, stamped envelopes per minute. A little bit different, a little bit weird. We had a customer that did, I'll call it homeopathic, or maybe we call it non-prescription medication. Specifically, if they're within a subscription model. Those are sweet, sweet customers. They're going to grow fast within that subscription model normally, but if they have a valuable enough product the way this customer did with us, they could throw 5 or 10 of those things away before it even started to eat into their costs. The markup on those was so immense. I think it was a 95% markup for them. It was easy for them to say, don't worry about that, throw it away, we'll send you another one. It was difficult with the post office though, because Canada couldn't get these things within 3 or 4 weeks a lot of times. It was very, very difficult to get it delivered. And that was their choke point, if you will. Get them over with DHL. They're happy to spend $50, $60 to get that delivered because they have all the margin in the world and they know it's going to get there in 2 days. Their customer is happy, and that's what brings them back for more, just like our customers. We had another one that did speed radar detectors. They were shipping those out to Southeast Asia. I know how this police station in Ho Chi Minh found a company in Georgia to create their radar detectors is beyond me as well. And it was kind of scary when you pull up and the owner and his IT guys or his engineers would be out front with a tripod and what looks like a machine gun pointed out the front of their business, just doing this at the street because it had all the pieces removed and there's wires everywhere. It looks like they were building a flux capacitor or some other kind of crazy machine in front of this business. Oil and gas. If you hadn't thought about that, that is a big one. Everybody in Texas is laughing right now. Duh. Oil and gas is a fantastic vertical. They're all over. We have quite a few here in South Georgia. That will warm you up. How about cooling systems? We had quite a few customers that shipped cooling systems, parts, pieces, equipment. It was funny. They had two customers that were in Mexico that were across the street from each other, and they'd get confused all the time because one was Pepsi and the other was Coke. How they ended up across the street from each other is for y'all to figure out, but that was the really in a hurry shipment that they would always have to do. Last, I'm going to talk about documents. Anyone that's heard me speak before knows that I love adoption agencies, that was where my heart was, that we absolutely adored helping those kids and those families grow and continue to make their lives better. If you don't get excited or get emotional about any business, to me, it is always adoption agencies. The pictures that those sweet people have on their walls of the families and the children and the lives that they've changed and saved is a really special thing. We had a customer that did car shipping. So a container of Mercedes or what have you is being exported out of the States into maybe Eastern Europe, Central Europe even. They need to send a document ahead of that shipping container to get those cleared. They were happy to spend the $150 a lot of times it took to get that document delivered because it was there in 2 days. Because that car didn't sit in the container. And again, their customer was happy. When you got a $100,000 consignment going through, we do not care what it costs to put the document through. Get it there and don't ask any questions. We had an international patent law firm shipping all over the world. They weren't the most consistent, but when Christmas came around and they sent out their holiday gifts to everybody, they had a huge $10,000, $15,000 bill, and those were the kind of customers we were looking for. You hear us say often, just because someone's only doing one shipment a month does not make them a bad customer. That just means there's a high probability that a couple of times a year, they're going to have monster gross margin because nobody's giving them discounts. The last one I had was an international chamber of commerce. If you hadn't thought about that, they're all over. We worked with one, it was a German chamber of commerce. I walked in there and I said, I was actually there for one of their events, but I said, why is this FedEx envelope here? Are y'all saying you don't work with the German delivery company? You work with FedEx? That was a real easy sell, especially once they saw WebShip. So I didn't have anything else unless y'all had any questions. I think barring a countdown 3, 2, 1 on no questions, that would conclude my session. Thank you, Magnus. Did you have anything else there, Mike?
No, fantastic. Appreciate it.
I do actually have just one closing question. What would be advice that you would give to an account executive who maybe is having a bad day? They've gotten tons of rejection. It's about halfway through the day and they've still got more calls they have to make. What's your biggest piece of advice for that type of a situation?
That is a great one. That is something that I ran into often. And for me, it was go for a run. It was clear your head. It was get whatever is weighing me down or hurting me off of my chest and get back to zero. Get back to who I am and what makes me so effective. And like you guys were saying, that the passion, the excitement, if that's not coming through in your voice, fix it. Go in front of the mirror and get those happy, positive emotions going again, because it's just going to cause a downward decay if you don't.
Reset. I love it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.